Okay. Gonna go ahead and hit record. Gonna admit everybody. And hit record. Gonna admit. 7 o'clock. Stephen, the floor is yours.
And sorry about that. Welcome everyone to the 2024 Oregon Country Fair Budget Board meeting. And we will open the meeting with the bell, which has been missing for a while. And with that, we will open the meeting and go to announcements. Does anyone have an announcement? Please put your name in the chat. Go ahead, Arna.
Yeah, just raise my hand, sorry.
Yeah.
I have an announcement. The committee's annual reports are due on March 15th. So I've reminded all the liaisons once before to remind their committees to do this and to assist them if they need it. This is just another reminder. I think you're going to get a reminder at every board meeting until March 15th that this needs to be done. So please remind your committees that this needs to be done. Liaisons are, can assist their committees in doing this, but shouldn't be doing it for them. The information that's needed, I've sent to the liaisons. It's also in the October board minutes, which is when we passed the motion about this, and it lays out what needs to be in the annual report. So this is just a reminder to all committees, and that this report needs to be in by March 15th. Thanks. That's it.
Thank you. And Stephen Dyerkoff. We're not hearing you, Stephen. You're not muted, but we're not hearing you. Still not hearing you. Microphone issue. Which microphone are you on? You kind of came through garbled there, like you're having more of a data process bandwidth issue. Not discernible. Sorry. Is there anyone else who has an announcement while Steve works on his sound? While Stephen works on sound. For those who don't know, take a look at chat. Vanessa posted a link to the budget detail document in chat. All right.
Stephen, I don't have an announcement, but could Stephen Dyerkoff just write his announcement in the chat?
Possibly. I just given him a minute to try and work on his sound. Stephen, we're gonna move on, and if you get your sound back and you need it, then do that. And if you can post what you need to announce in chat, do that. Can you give me a thumbs up that you're in that? No. All right. Yeah, Dean says you might want to exit and re-enter, which isn't a bad idea. Worst it could do is cause you some inconvenience. John, did you have an announcement?
Actually, I had a question for you, which is I think we have only 11 of us here tonight. So could you just make it clear to us what our numbers for voting and stuff are in advance so we don't get confused later? Thanks.
Okay. At 11, our numbers stay the same. So 8 to pass a motion. Do we need to do, for taking minutes, do we need to do a roll call or identify who is not here?
Yeah.
For the recording?
John Alexander's not here.
Okay.
He's out of town on business.
Okay. So, yeah, the numbers don't go down for 2/3 vote until you reach 9, I believe. Because at 10 you're still at 6 point something for 2/3. And I'm doing that in my head, so I'm not sure I'm right at the moment. So any other announcements? Last call for announcements. Okay, moving on, we're going to go to agenda review, amend and approve. Is there any objection to the agenda as posted? Last call for any objection to the agenda as posted. Hearing none, the agenda is approved by unanimous consent, and we're going to move over to the treasurer's report. Hillary?
Yeah, so thank you, Steve. So I'll just give a brief overview and then we might, yeah, I'll just do it that way. I was just trying to think if we should do overviews for each section, but I think we can work in all the questions. I just want to start by thanking all the staff and all the budget committee members and all the loyal budget committee meeting attenders for their hard work and good thoughts and efforts to put this budget together. It went very smoothly. There were some difficult choices to make, and we stuck with our initial agreements, and we tried as hard as we could to communicate in writing. We presented what we had to the coordinators last month and took notes, part of the notes being to go back to our old process of contacting, being really diligent about contacting coordinators that we didn't accept their full request before this meeting. So we will be working on that, on rounding up that communication. As what we're asking you to vote on tonight is the operating budgets. The capital budgets will come later. One way to kind of get an overall picture is through this document, which is the overall 23 and 24 budget. And it groups, it's the main groupings. And what you can see from that is that the revenue projection is up in 2023 by about 400,000. And that, if you remember, is mostly because of fee increases and changes in the way we're going to date the advanced sale tickets. Because if you remember, we adjusted the volume of sales to be fairly close to what the volume was in 2023. Which also means we have a potential upside of more than $250,000 if we sell a lot more, the 5,000 more admissions tickets and more SOs and more, registration. The bulk of that revenue increase is being absorbed by the very large increases we had last year to a couple of our major contracts. The toilets and the buses and a couple of the other contracts also came in high. So if you look at the other changes, you can see in the site manager, the SM budgets and the EM budgets, that's where the toilets and the buses hit. And you can see that we increased the budget this year to match those contracts continuing at that level. And then everything else is there's variance. A couple went down, a couple went up, but it's largely the operating level, the what's called here net income. Nonprofits would call it excess revenue, but the projected net is very similar to last year before our capital projects. But I do think we have a much bigger upside this year than before than last year. But that's what we have to figure out this year is, will our attendance go back up? We're finding a new normal, and we don't know that it's going to look like what we've counted on in the past. So time will tell, but this budget is constructed in such a way that we should be okay, even if we don't meet, the higher sales. The other thing that we were trying to do, and we did succeed in, is meet the capacity limits, keep the capacity amounts fairly similar. And the board can find that on the capacity report post 2023 and 24. And I'm just going to give you a quick overview of that. Of what that is saying is, we're keeping our overall people on property very similar to what it was budgeted for in 2023. The budget's numbers are consistently higher than our actual numbers for when it comes to the internal population. For the external population, it used to be that they always exceeded our budgets, but the internal population is always a little bit lower than what we budget for. We don't sell all the SOs, you know, that type of thing. But what we see here is a trend in 2024 and in 2023 away from the comp day passes, away from trade passes, away from teams, and into crews and SOs. And what you can't see broken out here is that the elders have also increased, but we've kept the overall numbers the same. We are, this year, the budgeted numbers are about 20, less than 2,000 higher than 2018, and less than 4,500 less than in 2019. So we are almost 5,000 below that really big year as we intended to be. So we definitely are, you know, experiencing the friction of saying, you know, being more cautious about adding passes. We experienced that a lot during the budget process. It didn't mean that crews stopped, you know, seeing the way forward is by adding more people. There were several crews that we were able to remove trades and add crews, but it's something that we're going to have to discuss more and more as we go forward. If we're trying to manage our growth, like how do we transfer people around? How do we shift resources around? What are our priorities? That type of thing. But that's not what we're here to do tonight. Tonight we are here to do the budget. So I'm going to hand it over to who wants to make the first motion.
Thank you. We have all these motions are on the agenda, George. Can we just, George and Sandra, can we just make all the motions at once and consider them one at a time rather than make the motion each time? We're not hearing you.
Hillary, what do you want to do on that?
I don't think it's that inconvenient to just say I move the board budget at 97,700 and go from there. Because we'll have to repeat what the number is anyway when we move from one to the other.
That's fine. Yeah, I'm trying to give George a chance to see if he's going to fix his mic. It looks like. Can we go ahead and move on, George, while you work on that?
I think he went to find tech support.
Do you want to take the lead on this, Sandra?
Yeah, all right. I'll do the first one then. The board moves to approve the 2024 board budget in the amount of 97,700.
I'll second, since George isn't here.
Moved by Sandra Bauer and seconded by Paxton. Is there any member input on the board budget? Is there any member input? Please raise your hand in chat. Did you have input, Hillary?
Hillary, yeah. Traditionally the treasurers have gone under the member input. I just wanted to point out to folks that the budget committee is recommending an increase for the endowment giving. We've been getting consistent dispersals from the endowment principal, and we were giving for about 11,000 for years, and last few years we gave about 15, and at 20,000 that's just a little bit less than what we're getting dispersed to us each year, and we have a bank account with some in there. So I think we're in a really good spot to increase the endowment giving to 20,000. The budget committee and the board did not add back in the board giving yet, pending the task force that's working on the board giving requirements. So that's one of those things that if we have a good year, that would be a good time for the board to consider if they want to reinstate that part of our philanthropy. And then other things I think the board members are familiar with and have discussed among themselves. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any other member input? Last call for member input. Raise your hand in the chat. And seeing none, we'll go to board discussion. Is there any board discussion on this budget item? Can you raise your hand in chat just so we stay consistent? And George, are you still trying to say something? Check. Let me give a quick tip. I don't know if it'll affect Steve, but at the bottom where you have the thing that you can mute yourself, there's an arrow. You might check and see if there are other microphones on your computer to try. It might be that you're just on the wrong microphone. Go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, so I am just going back and forth between the two 2023 and 2024 budgets. Because it's not possible to get them side by side for comparison. And I notice just a change from last year of 13,900. And I was wondering if it would be okay for Hillary to sort of give us an overview of sort of like the changes and.
Are you talking about the overall? Or are you talking about line by line?
Not necessarily line by line, but maybe just kind of in broad strokes, like for instance, like spring fling and a couple other things that the budget has gone up. Is that because prices have gone up, or?
I can give you some on
Mhm.
this, and then AJ might be qualified too as well. I hope it's okay, Steve, if I just jump in there.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's less consulting in here. There is the change line item is lower than sometimes it's been in the past. There is less being spent on retreats than in the past and in meetings than in the past. But the philanthropy, as I described, the annual meeting is again restored as a in-person meeting, as a hybrid meeting. So the biggest changes I would say are to the consulting and to the in-person meetings and the philanthropy, the endowment going up.
Thank you. Can we go to AJ now?
Yeah, I think when we were considering this budget, the board had input on what they wanted to see in this budget for this year, and one of those things was some sort of budget for strategic planning, and so that was an addition that made a significant difference in last year versus this year. And so I just wanted to remind the board of that part of it, that was, we had asked for $25,000 for that, which was on a very low end for that kind of work. But it was more than we had budgeted before for that kind of thing. We hadn't budgeted at all for our strategic planning. And so just a reminder that we talked about that and we worked on that, and that's a big change in what we're doing this year.
Is there any other further board discussion? Last call for board discussion. Seeing none, is there any objection to adopting this budget item? Last call for objection to adopting this budget item by unanimous consent.
Steve, I will remind you, George is out to reset.
Yeah, we can wait for him to return if you like, just to be sure that's not a bad idea.
Let me text
Oh,
him.
he's there. He's
Okay.
back. Let's get him in. If I can find my mouse. George on a faraway screen now. Hey, George. Well, I see him there, but I got no camera and he's muted. All right. So, given that George is having some technical problems, we're going to take this motion as approved by unanimous consent, and we'll come back to George when we can communicate with him. And if he has any objection, we can come back and vote on it. Does that sound fair enough? So we can move on. So next motion would be crew budgets, and I'll go to Sandra first.
Okay, the board moves to approve the crew budget in the amount of $1,103,404.
Thanks. Are you able to, now that I can see your face, George, are you able to second that?
I'll second that.
And we hear you.
Miracles
And-
will never end.
So on the board budget, we were doing it by unanimous consent, but you were out of the room. So did you have any objection to adopting that motion
No, my
by
fault.
unanimous consent? Okay,
Yeah, we're good.
terrific. Okay, so we're moving on now, and that is moved by Sandra Bauer and seconded by George Braddock. And is there any member input on the crew budget? Apparently we're missing Kirsten now too. Everybody's having problems today. Is she back? Go ahead, Hillary.
Just to give a little bit of what that increase consists of, the crew budgets for 2024 are higher than the year before by about $55,000. A large amount of that is increases of 10% for inflation to the kitchens, and some of it is increases to entertainment. There's some increases to coordinator expense, as we had several teams that became crews this year. And we put a little there. I'm trying to remember if we had very much in our planning. We had built in a little bit of flex for the food vouchers since we're redenominating the food vouchers, but we did not include an increase for the food voucher per hour at this point. So most of this is inflation and, recreating crews and, those specific areas, kitchens and entertainment. There are some other areas that had small increases as well.
Thank you. Is there any other member input on the crew budgets? Last call, put your hand in chat if you want to speak to the crew budgets from the membership. Okay, seeing none, we're going to move to board discussion. AJ.
Just a quick question for Hillary. In previous years, I haven't had a chance to pay attention to this. Is it true that all of that board budget or crew budget is usually used? Do we ever not use that whole budget? Do you foresee us not using? I mean, $50,000 is a pretty big increase.
It's a big increase. There are patterns, AJ.
Yeah.
We tend not to use all of the coordinator expense. That's often underspent by significant amounts, 25 to 30%. We don't use all the food vouchers. Some of the food vouchers get turned into Jill Hyman Vision Fund, and then there's a certain amount that don't get cashed, $5,000 to $10,000. And then there are definitely crews that underspend and crews that have a really hard time doing their job without overspending. The main camp kitchen has a really hard time staying under budget. Some years construction did, although not recently. you know, it just, there's patterns, and typically overall we've stayed under budget, and then the last year or two we have not. You know, they've been really exceptional years for what we've asked the pre-fair crews to do and the preparation that needed to be done there, and just the inflationary impacts of wood, of rental equipment, and you know, things like that have put a strain on the budget.
Yeah, so that was the last part of my question was, is the 23 budget there a reflection of what was actually spent or the budget that was for it?
When the budget committee gets a budget, we look at what was spent last year and what they're asking for and what they're doing. And, you know, sometimes there's contracts and, you know, things like that. So we really are trying to anticipate what's needed to do what they're asked to do in the coming year.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
crews think that way too when they propose their budgets.
Awesome. Thank you.
Paxton.
I really appreciate the work done in this. I read all of the documentation and it was an amazing job. I understand the increase, but I really see, you know, support of the crews and trying to provide what they want in there. So I really, really appreciate the amount of work, and it took a lot of work because we've got a lot of crews. Anyway, thank you to the whole budget committee.
Last call for board discussion. Is there any more board discussion? Put your hand in chat.
I just want to reiterate. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, AJ. You basically raised your hand.
Okay, sorry about that. I just want to reiterate, as we go through these budget items, if board members have questions or members have questions about a certain thing, that doesn't mean that we don't appreciate people that put these budgets together, or the crews, or anybody. It is just a matter of us doing our job and asking those questions. And so I just want to put that out there. That's our job, to ask those questions, but I appreciate you all.
Thank you. Last call. Seeing no further board discussion, I will ask if we can approve this motion by unanimous consent. Is there any objection to unanimous consent? Okay, hearing none, the crew budget is approved by unanimous consent, and we'll move on to Culture Jam, and we'll let George lead this off.
Thank you. I move that the board approve the Culture Jam budget in the amount of $77,700.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by George Braddock and seconded by Paxton.
Nope.
Is there any member input on the Culture Jam budget? Are you going to speak to this at all, Hillary?
I can. It had, if you look line by line, you can compare the 2 years. There's a few items that went up and went down, and a few items that went down. The down was partly that we were renting a kitchen trailer specifically for Culture Jam, and that's now out of the budget. And then we, you know, went from having an employee to an independent contractor who's running the program, so that affected some changes. You know, and then the other changes are mostly what Jan's, you know, was asking for with his vision for where he wants to take the program.
Thank you. And I see correction. I misheard. AJ is the one who seconded that this particular board motion. Is there any other member input? If there is, put your hand in chat. It's the last call for member input on the Culture Jam budget. Okay, seeing none, we'll go to board discussion. Is there any board discussion on the Culture Jam budget? Don't feel obligated, but if anyone wants to speak, this is the last call for board discussion on the Culture Jam budget. Put your hand in chat. Seeing none, I will ask if we can adopt the Culture Jam budget by unanimous consent. Is there any objection to unanimous consent? Last call for objection to unanimous consent. Seeing none, the Culture Jam budget is adopted by unanimous consent, and we will move on to the office management budget. Do you want to go again, George?
Sure. I move that the board approves the office management budget in the amount of $71,000.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Who is that?
Me, Arna.
Okay, Arna. All right. Moved by George Braddock and seconded by Arna Shaw. Is there any member input on the office management budget? Last call for member input on the office management budget. Seeing none, we will go to a board discussion. Is there any board discussion on the office management budget? Last call for board discussion on the office management budget. Seeing none, is there any objection to unanimous consent on this motion? Last call for unanimous consent. For any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, the office management budget is adopted by unanimous consent, and we will go to site and facilities budget for Sandra.
Okay, the board moves to approve the site and facilities budget in the amount of $642,800.
Is there a second? I see Sue raising her hand, so we'll give that to Sue. So moved by Sandra and seconded by Sue. Is there any member input on the site and facilities budget? Last call for member input on the site and facilities budget. Raise your hand in chat if you want to speak. Seeing none, we'll go to board discussion. And Paxton, would you like to speak?
I'm just wondering, since this current ice storm that we just had, if there's a sufficient contingency in the budget for the site. I hope
So should that go to Hillary or to Alexis? Who needs to respond to that?
I can make one comment. I haven't assessed the site, and I bet Alexis has. Sometimes in the past, we've done that as capital projects. And it might be good to do it that way because it would also give Alexis some time to assess the site.
You have anything to add to that, Alexis?
Spot on. We have a windstorm in the forecast, so that was not the last of the trees to come down, I'm sure.
Thank you. AJ?
Well, I just want to briefly praise the board for paying attention to all of these budget items. It's obvious that everybody did their homework, and that's much appreciated. I would like to see if Hillary could give, for the membership out there that may not attend meetings or whatever, just a brief, because there is an increase like that, just a brief explanation, if you would.
Yeah, and Alexis could do this too. This is the budget where that big increase to the outhouses, to the toilets came. So that's a huge part of that. There's a couple of the other items that went up somewhat. We're also trying to consolidate all the contingency and miscellaneous and expense items, that the line items that weren't real specific and that things got kind of categorized willy-nilly as one or the other. So there's some changes there, but Alexis could speak with, to more detail about the variance and the different line items.
Alexis, can you add anything to this?
Not without some more specificity about what one. I mean, I can talk for a long time, and I don't think it'd be very productive. But if you have any specific questions,
You're breaking up quite a bit. Do you have anything more, AJ, on that?
Yeah, I guess I could be specific. What was the item that was the biggest change? I guess just something that gives the membership an idea of what was the biggest. And it seems like Hillary said it was the porta potties.
Yeah, that's
that didn't-
$300,000, the porta
Yeah.
potty.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
that's
Of
a
the
great enough-
333,000. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the
a
item.
great that's a great enough explanation. Thank you.
Did you want anything to that, Kirsten?
Yeah, I want to say that we increased the dust control budget line item as well. Thank you.
Okay, is there, I see Kevin, or,
Thank you. I was just curious if the porta potty budget, I guess that's like set in stone, or is there still like negotiations going on, or is there hope and a chance? Thanks, guys.
looks
Yeah.
like Kirsten can respond to that.
Yeah, that contract is still being negotiated. So we don't have an official contract as of right now, but we are basing the budget on last year's expense. So, and we expect it to come in at around that same level. Thank you.
Right. Is there any further board discussion? Last call for board discussion. Raise your hand in chat if you want to speak. Okay, seeing none, is there any objection to unanimous consent on this budget item? Last call for objection to unanimous consent for this budget item. Seeing none, the site and facilities budget is adopted by unanimous consent, and we will move on to the event management budget. Do you want to take that one, George?
Sure. I move that the board approve the event management budget in the amount of $566,213.
I'll second it.
Now with Sandra this time.
Mhm.
Moved by George and seconded by Sandra. Is there any member input on the event management budget? Any member input? Raise your hand in chat. Last call for member input on the event management budget motion. Seeing none, we will go to board discussion. Is there any board discussion on the event management budget? Raise your hand in chat. Lisa.
Sorry, chasing down the button there. I was just wondering if it looks like the budget only went up by 140, which isn't nearly as astronomical as the increase in the site manager budget because of the porta potties. But I was just wondering if Hillary, if you could just kind of give us again an overview of what were the biggest considerations for this year's budget. It's always good to know and understand those things.
Sure, and Mark could do this as well. Mark, do you want to?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. Really just in two areas, LTD buses, the 2023 budget, we had budgeted around $50,000 for LTD buses. That bill came in at around 147,000. And so we're budgeting a little bit more increase. So that's a difference in that budget alone of 110,000. And then we did see a little increase in, I did a small increase for inflation to our to our equipment. Our equipment budget last year was 145,000. And just to keep up with the same level of equipment that we rented, it's probably going to cost us about another, did about 5% there. So another $10,000 on that equipment, just getting us to the same equipment level we were in 2023. Think forklifts and golf carts and such. Yeah, between those two are the biggest expense increases from one year to the next. And we just figured with like the Oregon Department of Transportation, the sheriff contract, we did increase that about 10% as well for a $9,000 increase. So those were the big ones.
Thank you. Is there any other board input or board discussion on the event management budget? Last call for board discussion. Seeing none, is there any objection to unanimous consent on the event management budget motion? Last call for objection to the unanimous consent on the event management budget item. Seeing none, the event management budget motion is adopted by unanimous consent, and we will move on to the general management budget. Do you want to do that one, Sandra?
Okay, the board moves to approve the general management budget in the amount of $1,027,395.
Is there a second?
A second.
Moved by Sandra Bauer and seconded by George Braddock. Is there any member input on the general management budget? Raise your hand in chat if you'd like to speak to this. Is there any member input on the general management budget? Last call for member input. Seeing none, we'll go to board discussion. Is there any board discussion on the general management budget? Raise your hand in chat. Last call for board discussion on the general management budget motion. Seeing none, is there any objection to unanimous consent? Last call for objection to unanimous consent. Seeing none, the general management budget motion is adopted by unanimous consent. And we will go to the total 2024 expense budget motion. And I believe it's George's turn.
I don't think we need to pass that because
Oh, we don't?
That's what
Okay,
everything
listen,
adds
it's on
up
my
to.
list as a motion. So
Yeah.
I wondered because
Yeah, sorry.
we've added
Yeah.
them all up, then why?
yeah,
do you-
sorry. Yeah.
Okay, so there's no motion. Are we concluded with that? Correct? All the budget motions are concluded.
Yes, sir.
Okay, meeting evaluation. I do want to say, actually, I don't know if Steven Dyerkoff ever got his audio working. He wanted to let members know that 2 new committees are beginning their work. Meeting dates, Zoom links, and documents are posted on the .net site. That was the announcement he never got out.
Yeah, it's for the Rules Committee and the combination Elections and Bylaws committee meetings.
Okay, Grumpy?
I'm sorry I spoke out of turn there, but
No,
I just
no,
wanted to
appreciate it.
clarify
Thank
that.
you. Grumpy. Is he around? I don't have him on this screen. Is he trying to get his mic undone or?
Hi.
There you are. You're unmuted now. Do you want to speak?
Yeah. I thought you guys updated your homework. I'm on the budget committee. You guys did your homework. I didn't get it. Thank, because this was a very conducted meeting. Thank you.
It was garbled.
It was pretty garbled, Grumpy. I don't know that we really made that out. Sounds more like a weak internet connection than a mic issue.
I heard a thank you there, and I
Yeah,
also
I
happen.
think so.
I also happen to know
feel
he-
free to. You
Yeah,
can
he
also
had
feel
back
free to.
surgery.
You can also feel. What did you say?
He had back surgery and
Okay.
is probably prone listening to the meeting.
Yeah, if you want, if you were able to raise your hand, if you want, you can put it in chat, Grumpy. We heard you as best we could, and we did hear a thank you in there, and we appreciate it. Is there any other meeting evaluation? Last call. Arna?
Well, I thought this was a great budget meeting. People had done their homework and knew what was going on and didn't ask irrelevant questions, I thought. And it was as quick a budget meeting as I've ever seen. And I've watched most of them, or a lot of them at least. So thank you, everyone, for getting through this quickly.
Thank you. Sandra?
Yeah, the same. I was gonna say, yeah, and I just wanna, it was a lot of work that the budget and committee did and the staff did. And it was new it's been newer that the staff is doing so much of the work, and anyway, thanks to everybody for everything that they did to make this a good budget season. And it was difficult. There were a lot of hard decisions and people took it very seriously. So anyway, thanks. And thanks, Stephen, for a well-run meeting. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And Kirsten.
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, I just want to thank the Budget Committee for all of their hard work and working with the staff and working with the crews to come up with today's budget. I thank the board for their diligence and approving these budgets. It's going to be another year where we hope that things turn out well and that this will be our recovery year. We haven't made a profit since 2019, and I'm very optimistic that this is the year that we've absorbed the sticker shock of some major contract increases, and that we have overcome those, that we're going to stabilize this year, and that we're going to have a profitable year. So I'm very optimistic with this budget, and I think that it's going to be a very successful year. And again, thank you so much to all of the crews that make this event happen and are mindful of the budget and understand that tough decisions were needed to be made because we have to stay within our means. And hopefully, like I said, this will be the year where we are finally over the effects of the pandemic. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And last call, is there anything else for meeting evaluation? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the president's piece.
All right. I often say my evaluation for this piece. So thank you all for being here. I want to give a shout out to all the volunteers who show up and have their voices be heard during committee meetings and in our board meetings. Again, another shout out to the board for doing their homework. And I just want to address the elephant in the room. It's okay that we have a boring meeting because that means we're working together and we're doing the work, right? And so for those of you who are missing excitement, there's a Super Bowl coming up, there's other things coming up, but I like the good work that we're doing together, and if that means we're having boring meetings, so be it. Have a great night. I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we ring out as well?
Yes.
Okay, and with that, the 2024 Oregon Country Fair board budget meeting is adjourned. We've reached the end of the agenda.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you,
Good
everybody.
night.
Good night.
See you 1 week from
Good night.
today. See you next Monday. See y'all next
Oh my-
Monday.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.